The sky over the broken realm was always full of moving light, and the cities there floated like heavy boats above a deep black abyss. Stone towers hung on chains of wind, white bridges crossed between shining plates of metal, and distant thunder rolled through the air even when no clouds were near. The people of this world lived with one rule in their hearts, and that rule was simple and cruel. If you could not bind a mech relic with a spirit contract, then you could not protect your city when war came. That was why the old sky fortresses mattered so much, and that was why the whole realm was already trembling when Aren fell into it. He was a plain young man from another world, with short black hair, sharp eyes, and a body that looked more tired than strong. He had no royal blood, no magic lessons, and no plan at all, only a stubborn will to survive and a mind that refused to give up when things turned impossible. The central danger was clear from the start. Several rival kingdoms were racing toward the Sky Fortress network, and if one power seized it and closed the world seal, every city left outside would be trapped, starved, and lost in the abyss forever. Aren landed in the middle of that danger with no warning, slammed into a metal platform in the city of Hale, and nearly fell through a broken gate before a patrol pulled him back. The city guard was led by Captain Sarah, a woman with long brown hair, a hard stare, and a calm voice that hid real fear. She wore a steel blue coat over light armor, and she wanted only one thing: to keep her city alive long enough for help to arrive. Beside her stood Leo, a young man with sandy blonde hair and a quick smile that failed to hide his nerves. He was a mechanic who repaired relic frames, and he believed the Sky Fortress network could still be restored if the right pilot appeared. They both stared at Aren when a dormant mech relic in the plaza suddenly lit up as he touched it, because the old machine answered him at once, without ritual, without delay, and without pain. In that instant, the impossible truth became clear. Aren had the rare gift of instant synchronization, a gift so strange that even Sarah stepped back. Most pilots needed years to form one bond, and many failed after great effort. But Aren could hear the spirit pulse inside the relic like a clear voice, and the machine followed his thoughts as if it had been waiting for him. That gift made him valuable, but it also made him dangerous, because anyone who learned the truth would try to claim him. The first real attack came before sunset. Dark banners appeared over the western bridge, and the soldiers of King Victor marched in with heavy relic frames and iron masks. Victor was the ruler of a high city called Blackwatch, a man with black hair, cold gray eyes, and a cruel habit of smiling when others panicked. He wanted the Sky Fortress network because he believed the realm was already too broken to save. In his mind, the weak should be sealed out and the strong should rule what remained. That belief was not random evil. It came from years of watching floating cities collapse, spirit storms tear apart trade routes, and citizens beg for protection that never came. Victor decided that one hard order was better than endless fear, even if it meant locking entire regions away. His rival was Lady Raven, a sharp and polished woman with silver black hair, elegant dark robes, and a voice as smooth as glass. She led a hidden order of spirit engineers called the Veil Assembly, and she wanted the Fortress Network because it contained the oldest spirit cores in the realm. She claimed she wanted peace, but her real goal was control. If she could seize the network first, she could rewrite every spirit contract and place every mech relic under her order. When her scouts saw Aren awaken a relic in seconds, they reported him as a key risk and a key prize. Victor wanted him as a weapon, Raven wanted him as a lockpick for the ancient system. Neither cared what Aren wanted. Sarah had no choice but to bring Aren into the city forge, where Leo and a stern elder named Master John studied relic maps spread across metal tables. John was a man with white hair, broad shoulders, and ink-stained hands, and he had spent his life repairing fortress gates while keeping the old stories alive. He explained the rule of the realm in simple words. The floating cities were held up by sky pillars, but the sky pillars were fed by spirit contracts hidden inside ancient mech relics. Those relics were not just machines. They were sleeping guardians built by a forgotten age to keep the abyss quiet. The abyss below was not empty, and it was not dead. It was alive, and it stirred whenever the fortress network weakened. If the network sealed without the right key, the abyss would spread its hunger upward and swallow the lower cities first, then the rest. Aren listened, and for the first time since arriving, he understood why everyone looked so tense all the time. The world itself was hanging by a thread. Then Leo brought out a broken relic frame called Thunder Wolf, a tall silver mech with one cracked shoulder plate and one dark eye lens. Its spirit core had gone silent after a battle, and no pilot could wake it. Aren placed his hand on the frame and the machine came alive in a bright shock of blue light. Not only did it wake, but it copied Aren at once, adjusting to his breathing, his balance, and his intent. Sarah watched in shock as storm sparks wrapped around the mech arms. Aren found that he could pull wind power from the storm above the city, then shape it through spirit channels inside the relic, turning a weak frame into a force that looked far beyond its limits. Leo called it a combat form no one had seen before. Sarah called it the only chance they had. The next days turned into a race. Aren trained inside the forge yard, learning to move with Thunder Wolf as if his own body had grown larger and faster. He was not born for war, but he learned quickly, and each successful sync made him steadier. The more he trusted the mech, the more the mech trusted him back. That bond mattered because the old machines in this realm did not obey force. They obeyed spirit. Still, Aren had one advantage no one else had ever seen. He could sync instantly, then layer storm energy over the spirit core without breaking it. That meant he could enter a relic, feel its limits, and push beyond them in the same breath. Leo kept working beside him, tightening joints and replacing burned seals, while Sarah formed a defense plan around the city gates. Yet even as they prepared, the enemy net closed in. Victor sent siege frames across the bridge to test their strength. Raven sent masked agents through the lower vents to steal spirit charts and relic keys. One night, an agent nearly reached the forge vault before Aren caught him with Thunder Wolf and forced him back through a wall of sparks. The agent escaped, but not before leaving a warning. The Veil Assembly knew Aren was the only pilot who could open the Skyfortress path. Worse, they had learned that his power did not just wake relics. It could also merge them with storm fields, a force the old records had named a key to the final seal. That was the first true twist. Aren was not only a rare pilot. He was the living answer to a forgotten system, and the realm itself seemed to have prepared for him long before he arrived. Sarah then revealed a secret that changed everything. Years ago, she had served as a messenger in the upper court, and she had seen a hidden chamber beneath the fortress network. In that chamber, the last engineers had left a warning. The world seal was never meant to be a prison. It was meant to hold back a chain reaction inside the abyss, but only while the fortress network remained in perfect balance. If Victor sealed the realm by force, he would break that balance. If Raven rewrote the spirit contracts, she would also break it. Either choice would doom countless people. The only way to save everyone was to reach the central Skyfortress, awaken the sleeping relay cores, and restore the old network before the seal could be triggered. The problem was that the central fortress, called Crown Hold, sat far above the city line and was guarded by relic towers, storm locks, and a gate that answered only to ancient pilot codes. To reach it, Aren had to capture the moving root of 3 smaller fortresses first, because each one held a key shard needed for the final ascent. So the battle became a climb through the sky. Victor attacked the first fortress with brute force, believing fear would make the defenders submit. Raven moved in the shadows, sending spies to whisper lies and turn allies against each other. Aren fought both threats while trying to understand the strange feeling inside him, a feeling that the relics were not only machines but memories. During one fierce clash on a wind bridge, Thunder Wolf merged storm power and spirit force so cleanly that its armor formed a sharp new shell of light. The sight stunned both armies. For a moment, even Victor hesitated. But the greatest shock came when Aren reached the second fortress and found the true face of the Hidden Order. Raven was there in person, calm and smiling, with her silver-black hair tied back and her hands covered in engineer marks. She told Aren that his arrival was not an accident. Long before he fell through the rift, the Veil Assembly had opened small fractures between worlds while searching for a pilot who could wake the old network. Raven believed the realm had grown weak because rulers cared more about power than balance, and she wanted to use the seal to make herself the only keeper of spirit law. She had not summoned Aren in a clean way, but her experiments had pulled him through. That was the second twist, and it cut deep because it meant his first step into this world had already been shaped by secret hands. Aren felt anger rise in him, but he also saw the truth under her words. Raven was afraid of chaos, and she had turned that fear into control. Victor was the same in another way. Both wanted order, but neither trusted people enough to share it. Aren realized then that his own path had to be different. He did not need to rule the world, and he did not need to close it. He needed to protect the people inside it, city by city, bond by bond. With that choice, his spirit settled. Thunder Wolf responded at once, and the mech frame changed again, growing brighter and steadier as storm lines raced across its armor. Sarah saw it and smiled for the first time in days. Leo shouted for the gate team to move. John rang the forge bell, calling every citizen to stand their ground. The fortress battle that followed shook the whole sky. Victor drove his heavy relic squad straight at the outer wall, but Aren met him in the open air, leaping from one moving platform to another while Thunder Wolf flashed with blue storm light. Raven released spirit engineer drones that tried to cut the fortress links, but Aren could feel each relic pulse and sync with them fast enough to turn their own systems against them. One by one, he captured the root keys, not by taking them for himself, but by restoring the old balance inside each fortress core. That choice mattered. It meant he was not becoming another Victor or Raven. He was becoming a guardian. When the last key shard was set into place, the path toward Crown Hold opened in the clouds, and a deep sound rose from below, low and alive, as if the abyss had noticed their success. Everyone on the bridge froze. The living dark had awakened in response to the network moving again. Victor pulled back his army, shocked that brute force had failed. Raven looked at Aren with open disbelief because she had expected a tool and instead found a person who could not be broken into her shape. Yet the road ahead was still not safe. Crown Hold was calling, the abyss was stirring, and the final seal was beginning to crack. Aren stood at the front of the last bridge, wind pulling at his hair, Thunder Wolf humming beside him like a loyal giant, and he understood that this was only the beginning. He had entered the realm as a stranger, but now the cities were depending on him, and the next rise into the sky would decide whether this broken world could still be saved. The wind over the last bridge was cold enough to sting, and it carried the sound of iron chains, distant bells, and trembling stone. Below the bridge, the black abyss moved like a living shadow, quiet for now, but never truly asleep. Aren stood near the front with his short black hair pushed back by the wind, his dark eyes fixed on the sky path ahead, while Thunder Wolf waited beside him like a tall silver guardian with one glowing blue eye. Behind them, Hale glowed with forged lights and narrow windows, and every light in the city looked smaller than before, as if the whole place knew that something terrible was waiting above. The danger was simple and clear, even if the world around it was not. Crown Hold was calling, the final seal was cracking, and if the seal broke before the sky network was repaired, the abyss could spread through every floating city and leave nothing but falling stone. That was why Aren mattered now. He was no longer just a stranger who had arrived from nowhere. He was the one person the relic had answered, and the one person who might still keep the sky from collapsing. Captain Sarah arrived at a fast march, her steel blue coat snapping behind her, her long brown hair tied back tight so it would not block her vision. She was the commander of Hale, a woman who had spent years protecting people who were too tired to protect themselves, and she carried herself with the hard calm of someone who had learned to keep fear in a locked room. Her eyes moved from Aren to Thunder Wolf, then to the bridge and the dark sky beyond it. She wanted one thing above all else, to keep Hale alive long enough for the citizens to escape if the fortress network failed. Beside her came Leo, a slim young mechanic with sandy blonde hair and bright, worried eyes, his soot-stained vest covered in tools and his gloves already dirty from repairs. Leo wanted the same thing Sarah wanted, but he also wanted to prove that his skill could save more than broken gates and loose gears. A few steps behind them walked Master John, broad-shouldered and steady, his thick white hair glowing in the forge light, his old apron marked by years of heat and hard work. He had repaired relic frames for longer than Leo had been alive, and he cared because every machine he fixed gave people another chance. John looked at Aren with serious kindness and said the truth without hiding it. Crown Hold was not just a fortress. It was the heart of the Sky Network, and the world seal beneath it was built to hold the abyss back when the first builders could no longer trust their own power. If that seal was triggered wrong, the network would not protect the realm. It would tear the whole balance apart. They did not have time to speak longer because a deep horn sounded from the upper rail, and a black squad of Blackwatch riders appeared on the far side of the bridge approach. Their armor was dark, their shields sharp, and their stance was trained and cold. King Victor had sent them ahead not to help but to control the path and keep anyone else from reaching Crown Hold before him. Victor was the ruler of Blackwatch, a man with neat black hair, gray eyes like winter steel, and a voice that sounded calm even when it carried threat. He wanted the fortress network because he believed the sky could only survive under one strong hand, and he believed that hand must be his. He did not see himself as a destroyer. He saw himself as the only person willing to make the harsh choices others could not bear. That was what made him dangerous. He could justify anything if it gave him control. One of the riders shouted that the route was closed by royal order, and Sarah stepped forward at once, her hand on her weapon, ready to keep the bridge open by force if she had to. But Aren raised a hand and asked for one moment, because Thunder Wolf had begun to hum again, and the relic frame seemed to hear something in the distance that no human ear could catch. The cracked shoulder plate shifted, the blue eye brightened, and a low pulse ran through its storm lines. Leo stared in awe and fear, because he knew then that the relic was responding not just to power but to the seal itself. The first clash came fast, but it was not a battle meant to wound. It was a test of will, speed, and trust. Thunder Wolf stepped forward with heavy but careful movement, its armored arms lifting just enough to block the riders without crushing them, and Aren felt the strange force inside him move like a steady current. He did not know how to command the relic at first, but he understood one thing very clearly. He did not need to overpower the world. He only needed to guide what was already awake. When the Blackwatch riders pushed in, Thunder Wolf answered with a burst of blue storm light that swept their shields aside and drove them back across the bridge stones. The air flashed, the bridge shook, and Sarah ordered her people to hold the line while Leo ran to a side panel and opened a maintenance hatch that should not have existed on an ancient bridge. That discovery mattered because it showed that someone had been hiding repair paths through the Sky Network for years. Someone had planned for the fortress system to fail, and that meant the collapse was not an accident. John looked into the hatch and found old markings cut into the metal, markings that matched relic codes from the oldest forge records. His face tightened when he saw them. These routes were made to let someone enter Crownhold from below, not from the main gate. That meant the real path had been hidden on purpose, and the person who hid it had known the seal would one day need to be opened by hand. The twist hit them harder than the storm. As Leo checked the markings again, he found a silver tag locked inside the panel, and on it was the seal mark of Lady Raven. She arrived from the dark edge of the bridge not long after, her silver-black hair falling smooth over her shoulders, her flowing dark robes lined with metal plates that caught the light with a cold shine. She was the spirit engineer who served the court, and she had always spoken like someone who knew more than she was saying. Her beauty was sharp and careful, but her eyes were colder than the night sky. Sarah lifted her weapon at once because Raven had been too close to Victor for too long and no one trusted her. Raven did not flinch. She said the hidden route was real, and she admitted that she had sealed it years ago because Victor had wanted to force the world's seal open before the network was ready. He believed that if he controlled the abyss first, he could control every city that feared it. Raven had helped hide the route because she had once believed the king could still be reasoned with, and because she had feared what would happen if the seal was broken under the wrong command. That was the secret hidden in her motive. She was not loyal to Victor. She was loyal to the structure of the realm itself, even if she had failed to say so clearly before now. She also revealed something worse. Crownhold was not simply calling for repair, it was calling for a choice. The world seal would accept either a ruler who forced it or a bearer who listened to it, but only one path would leave the sky stable. Victor had already moved his forces toward the upper chambers, and if he reached the seal first, he would try to bind the whole network to his rule. The city would survive, but it would become his prison. Aren stood in silence for a long second, feeling the weight of all that truth settle on him. At the beginning of this journey, he had only wanted to understand where he was and how to survive. Now he was being asked to decide what kind of future this realm would have. He looked at Sarah, who was ready to fight for her people, at Leo, who was ready to fix anything if he was given enough time, at John, who had spent his life keeping broken things working, and even at Raven, who had lied by silence but had also tried to protect the secret long enough to matter. Then he looked at Thunder Wolf, whose one glowing eye reflected the storm above the abyss. The relic lowered its head as if waiting for his choice. Aren finally understood that strength was not the same as control. Victor thought rule was the same as safety, but the bridge, the seal, and the relic all told a different story. The realm could only be saved by balance, trust, and people willing to stand together. He placed his hand on Thunder Wolf's shoulder plate, and the machine answered with a deeper hum than before, like a promise waking up. Sarah gave a single sharp nod, Leo locked the hatch open, and John handed Aren a worn relic key that had been hidden in his forge for decades. That key was the first proof that the old builders had expected someone like Aren to arrive one day. They moved at once because the sky did not wait for anyone. Sarah led the line, her voice firm as she ordered the surviving guards to hold the bridge. Leo stayed close to Thunder Wolf and kept checking the joints, whispering careful warnings whenever a spark jumped from the frame. John carried his tools and showed them the hidden route down into the maintenance spine beneath the bridge, where old stone and new steel were stitched together by forgotten hands. Raven stayed near the back, watching the dark sky with a face that gave away almost nothing, yet her silence now felt different. It was not the silence of a spy trying to hide. It was the silence of someone afraid she had already made the wrong choice once and could not afford to make it again. Ahead of them, the hidden path led toward Crown Hold, where the storm locks were beginning to spin out of control and the last seal was cracking open wider with each passing minute. Far above, a distant pulse flashed behind the clouds and everyone felt it at once. The abyss was stirring again. Aren took one breath, then another, and followed the others into the shadowed passage. He was still the outsider in name, but no one in that line treated him like one anymore. He had become the one person the sky could not ignore. And as the secret route opened beneath the bridge, the path to Crown Hold waited ahead, dark and narrow, with Victor already climbing toward it from the other side. The secret passage dropped under the bridge like a black scar, and the cold air inside carried dust, old oil, and the smell of stone that had not been touched in years. Far above, hail floated over the abyss with its white bridges, metal rails, and forge lights burning behind the walls, but down here the city felt far away, like a dream that could vanish at any second. Aren moved at the front with a steady face, his short black hair damp with mist, his dark eyes fixed ahead, and his lean body kept low so the narrow passage would not slow him down. Captain Sarah stayed close behind him, her long brown hair tied back tight, her steel blue coat moving with each sharp step, because she knew the route to Crown Hold could decide whether the Sky Cities survived the night. Leo came next, sandy blonde hair messy under the flicker of the lantern, his hands ready near the tool belts at his waist, while Master John followed with broad shoulders and calm weight, his thick white hair shining faintly in the dim light. No one spoke much because everyone understood the same simple truth, and it was already heavy between them. If Victor reached Crown Hold first, he could seize the world seal, bend the Sky Network to his will, and turn fear into law for every city above the abyss. Victor climbed from the far side with cold patience, his neat black hair barely moving as he crossed the broken inner stairs of the fortress route. He wore his long black royal coat like armor, and the silver trim caught each flash from the storm locks above. His gray eyes stayed fixed on the same goal as the others, but his reason was very different, and that difference made him dangerous. Victor did not think like a man trying to protect people. He thought like a man who believed only one hard fist could keep order from breaking apart. Years of war, sky raids, and panic had taught him that cities fought each other when they were scared, and he was sure that if one ruler did not control the fortress network, the abyss would break the realm apart in chaos. Lady Raven climbed beside him with slow grace, her silver-black hair falling over dark robes lined with metal panels, and her voice stayed smooth even in the dark. She was not there for loyalty alone. She wanted the hidden spirit engine under Crown Hold because she believed the old relic power could be refined, measured, and used to make Victor unchallengeable. That was why she kept pushing him deeper, and that was why she never looked back. The hidden route had become a race, but it was also becoming a test because the network was waking, and ancient rules were stirring under every step. The passage split into 3 tunnels, and the walls began to hum like a giant machine coming back to life. Small silver marks on the stone lit one by one, and Master John stopped with a hand raised because he knew old relic patterns when he saw them. He had spent his life repairing forge gates, broken rails, and spirit locks, and he understood that the fortress network did not open for force alone. It answered balance. It answered the right flow of power the same way a blade answered the correct hand. He told the others that the world seal was not a simple lock, and it was not a weapon either. It was a living system built to hold the abyss in place by linking the floating fortresses together, with each city carrying one part of the burden. Crown Hold sat at the center because it held the core rhythm, but if one ruler tried to command it without the others, the seal would strain and the entire network could fail. That was the secret Victor had never accepted. He wanted control, but the seal wanted harmony. Aren listened in silence, and something inside him tightened because he suddenly understood why the sky had been calling to him since the first relic chamber. He was not just reacting to power, he was being recognized by it. The answer came faster than anyone expected. A chamber opened ahead, and inside stood a half-broken control frame set into the floor, its silver body covered in cracked armor and storm lines that still glowed faint blue. The shape was wolf-like, tall and strong, with one cracked shoulder plate, one bright blue eye lens, and heavy arms built for defense. Thunder Wolf. Leo stared at it with wide eyes because he had heard old forge stories about relic frames that could choose a pilot by spirit resonance, yet few believed such tales anymore. Master John did not look surprised. He looked worried because he knew what it meant when an ancient frame woke before Crown Hold. It meant the network had already chosen its path and it might not wait for anyone else. The chamber floor then lit with a ring of symbols, and a clear voice came through the stone, calm and old, speaking of the world seal as if it had just been waiting for this moment. It said the seal would respond to the first true bearer who could carry both force and balance, not fear and conquest. Then Thunder Wolf lifted its head and its blue lens locked onto Aren. The frame did not rise for Sarah, did not answer Leo, and did not bow to John. It answered Aren at once, as if it had known him before any of them arrived. Aren felt the pull in his chest, strong and immediate, and for one brief moment the chamber around him went still. He stepped closer, and the broken mech frame opened its arms with a low metal groan, like a guardian waking after a long sleep. Sarah watched him with sharp focus because she had already seen enough strange things to know this was no accident. Leo looked almost stunned, yet his hands were ready to help if needed, while Master John gave a slow nod as if some part of an old question had finally been answered. But Lady Raven saw something else. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time she did not look fully in control. She understood that if Aren could awaken Thunder Wolf, then he might be the missing key to the fortress network, and that meant Victor might not be the one the seal chose. That truth hit her hard because she had built her plan around the idea that Victor would rule through force and her own knowledge would keep him useful. A new choice now stood in front of her, and she hated that choice. On the far side of the chamber, a second door began to shake under heavy steps. Victor had reached the same layer of the fortress, and his voice rolled through the stone with sharp command. He ordered Aren to stand down and hand over the relic frame because he claimed only the crown had the right to protect the sky. Sarah drew herself upright and answered him with a cold stare, while John braced a hand on the wall and Leo swallowed hard, already thinking of every tool he might need. The two sides could not see each other yet, but they were close enough to feel the air change. Then the chamber widened and the hidden route opened into a vast inner hall built beneath Crown Hold, where broken bridges crossed over a deep dark drop and old gates rose like ribs from the floor. Storm light flashed through narrow windows high above, and the entire fortress network seemed to breathe. Small platforms moved on their own, metal links shifted, and distant locks answered with low thunder. This was the first full sign that the world seal was waking, and it made everyone feel both hope and fear at once. Victor entered from the opposite side with Lady Raven at his shoulder, and for a moment both teams stood under the same ruined roof, staring across the gap like rivals in a final court judgment. Victor raised one armored glove and spoke with a voice full of cold certainty. He said the realm could not afford weakness, and he said the cities below would tear each other apart if the sky roots stayed free. He claimed the only safe future was one rule, one army, and one will. Aren heard the logic in those words, and that was what made them dangerous, because they were not empty. Victor truly believed them. He wanted control because he was afraid of collapse, and fear had hardened into cruelty long ago. Sarah stepped forward first, her firm face lit by storm glow, and she told Victor that fear could hold people still, but it could never make them loyal. She said the cities needed trust, not chains, and that the sky would fall faster under a cruel hand than under a broken one. Victor did not answer at once because the truth in her words annoyed him more than any insult could. Lady Raven then moved to the side of the chamber and studied the control marks in the floor, and her eyes widened as she realized the old system was already adapting to Aren. She finally spoke the twist that changed everything. Aren was not just a random outsider who happened to awaken a relic. He was a carrier of dormant resonance from the old line of builders who once helped design the seal. That meant his presence was not an accident, and it also meant the fortress network had been waiting for someone like him for generations. John turned slowly toward Aren, surprised but not shocked, because he had suspected for some time that the boy carried more than luck. Leo looked at Aren with new respect, as if his friend had suddenly stepped out of the dark into a larger story. Aren himself felt the weight of it, and he did not like how heavy it was. He had spent much of his life thinking he had no place in any great plan, but now the sky was telling him he belonged in the middle of one. The hall shuddered harder and the thunder wolf frame began to power up beside him, its joints filling with bright storm light. But the awakening was unstable, and Master John warned that a wrong command could overload the chamber and tear the root apart. That was the real danger of the world's seal. It was not meant to obey selfish hands. It was meant to hold balance, and balance could not be forced in one step. Victor saw the same danger and still reached for control because he believed only speed and command could save what he loved. Lady Raven watched him, and for one brief instant the cold certainty on her face cracked. She saw that Victor would risk the realm to prove he was right, and she saw that her own plans had followed him too far into the dark. Across the chamber, Aren placed one hand against the thunder wolf frame, and the mech answered with a low pulse that spread through the hall like a heartbeat. The seal lights shifted. The bridges above trembled. Both sides understood the same thing at once. The choice was no longer about reaching crown hold. It was about who would shape the ancient power before it woke fully. Aren took a breath, stood straighter, and felt fear turn into purpose. While Sarah moved to protect him, Leo hurried to the panel at John, and Victor lifted his hand to force the issue. The chamber filled with rising light and grinding stone, and the next moment would decide whether the sky network opened as a shield or shattered into ruin. Crown Hold shook like a living thing, and the whole inner hall flashed with bright relic light, while stone dust drifted through the air like gray snow. The vast chamber below the fortress had broken bridges, moving platforms, and deep gaps that seemed to swallow sound, and every wall was marked with old symbols that woke in slow waves of gold and blue. Aren stood near the center of it all, a young man with short black hair, sharp dark eyes, and a lean body that still looked ordinary at first glance, even as the moment around him became anything but ordinary. He wore a simple dark jacket, fingerless gloves, travel pants, and worn boots, and his calm face hid the fact that his mind was moving faster than anyone else in the room. He understood the danger at once. If the ancient power finished waking in the wrong way, the Sky Fortress network could tear itself apart, and the whole Sky root system could fall into chaos. That was why Sarah moved to his side without hesitation, because Captain Sarah was a woman with long brown hair, pale skin, and a firm face that had learned to hide fear behind discipline. She wore a steel blue military coat over light armor and dark riding boots, and she carried herself like a guardian who had already lost too much to ever give up again. Master John stood near the broken control wall, an older man with thick white hair, broad shoulders, and weathered skin, his dark forge apron hanging over a plain work shirt and heavy pants. His kind but serious eyes watched every flicker of light because he knew this ancient system better than almost anyone alive, and he knew that the wrong command would not just fail, it would lock the entire fortress into ruin. Leo was already at the panel beside him, a young man with sandy blonde hair, bright eyes, and a slim mechanic build, his soot-stained vest and tool belts covered in dust as his careful hands worked as fast as his nervous breath would allow. He wanted to keep the machinery alive because he had spent his whole life fixing broken things, and now he was trying to fix the oldest thing he had ever seen. Across the chamber, King Victor stood with neat black hair, cold gray eyes, and a sharp face that never changed, even when the floor moved under him. He wore a long black royal coat with silver trim, armored gloves, and a high collar, and his cruel calm made him more frightening than any shout could have. He did not want to destroy the network. He wanted to own it, because a controlled sky route would let him rule every city above the abyss, and he believed that fear was the only honest kind of order. Beside him, Lady Raven watched with silver black hair and elegant features, her flowing dark robes fitted with metal panels and spirit engineer markings. She looked polished, cold, and hard to trust, and she mattered because she was the one who understood the hidden mechanics of the relic systems better than almost anyone in the chamber. She had helped Victor this far, but her true wish was still hidden inside her guarded expression. Then the Thunder Wolf relic frame answered again. The broken silver mech body with its cracked armor, dark lens panels, storm energy channels, and wolf-inspired lines shifted where it stood partly embedded in the floor. Its one blue eye lit brighter, and its heavy frame gave a low pulse that matched Aren heart for heart. This was not random power. It was a test body made for resonance, and it had chosen Aren because his mind stayed clear under pressure. The revelation struck him hard. He was not only opening a door, he was becoming the hand that would decide how the door moved. Victor saw that too, and his lifted hand tightened as he forced the command forward. The chamber answered with a deep grind, and the air filled with a harsh pressure that made everyone brace. Sarah stepped in front of Aren, ready to block Victor long enough for Leo and John to finish the panel sequence, while John shouted for Leo to hold the current steady and not let the control frame overload. The broken silver relic frame began to rise from the floor, slow and heavy, as if waking from a long sleep, and the storm lines across its body lit one by one. For one tense heartbeat, it looked as if Victor would seize control before anyone could stop him. Then Aren reached out with both hands and felt the resonance flood through him like cold lightning without pain. He did not fight the power. He listened to it. That was the first real choice he made, and it changed everything in the chamber. He understood that the world seal was not a weapon built to strike first. It was a lock, a shield, and a balance point for the whole sky realm. If someone forced it open with greed, it would turn wild and break the fortress network apart. If someone guided it with calm purpose, it could seal the abyss and protect every route between the floating cities. Victor wanted command because he feared a world he could not control. Aren wanted protection because he had seen too many people suffer under fear. That difference mattered more than strength. The Thunder Wolf frame suddenly unfolded at the joints, and its armor plates shifted with a harsh metallic cry as it rose to one knee, then to both feet. Its blue eye locked on Aren, and the chamber lights bent around the machine as if the relic itself was taking a breath. Leo shouted that the panel was almost ready, but the wrong input would trigger a full collapse of the lower hall. Master John barked a warning that the old bridge supports were failing and the moving platforms had begun to slip out of sync. Sarah looked over her shoulder and saw Victor stepping forward through the light, his armored gloves ready to seize the control line by force. For a moment, the room split into two clear paths. One path led to domination, fear, and Blackwatch taking the sky roots for itself. The other path led to risk, trust, and a power shared with purpose. Then Lady Raven made her move. She did not rush at anyone. Instead, she raised one hand and spoke a quiet command in the old relic language, and the markings on the wall answered her at once. A hidden set of locks opened under the floor, revealing a narrow secret passage beneath the bridge, made of old stone blocks, damp walls, and faint relic markings. This was the twist that no one had expected. Raven had not come only to support Victor. She had been using him as a shield because she knew a second route into the fortress core, and she had hidden that knowledge until the last possible moment. Her motive now came into focus. She wanted the world seal because she believed Victor would misuse it, but she also wanted the power for herself if she could take it first. In that instant, no one in the chamber could trust her fully, and that made the battle even worse. A gust of cold air rose from the opening below, carrying dust, old water, and the sound of deep machinery moving under the fortress. Victor turned toward Raven with a sharp look of anger because he understood at last that she was not his loyal partner. She was his rival. The chamber now had three dangers instead of one. Victor wanted control from the front, Raven wanted control from the shadows, and the fortress itself was waking without waiting for any of them. Aren took one steady breath and made his choice. He told Sarah to hold Victor back. He told Leo to keep the panel alive. He told John to guide the resonance flow through the cracked control frame. Then he stepped toward the Thunder Wolf relic and placed both hands on its chest plate where the blue light burned brightest. The machine answered with a deep hum, and the whole chamber seemed to align around that sound. Its heavy arms lifted and its cracked body locked into a stable stance. The broken frame was not just a shell. It was an early body made to carry a will into the world seal system, and that will had to be clear, brave, and steady. Aren felt fear inside him, but it no longer ruled him. He thought of the cities that depended on the sky roots, the people who could be saved if the fortress stood firm, and the many lives that Victor was willing to trap under his rule. That was enough. He pushed his mind into the relic flow, and the ancient power opened like a great door inside his chest. Light surged down the storm channels of the Thunder Wolf frame, jumped across the floor, and raced into the control panel beside Leo. The broken bridges under the chamber shuddered, then held. The moving platforms slowed, then found balance. John shouted that the sequence was working, and Sarah drove Victor back from the main line just long enough for the relay to lock. Victor struck the wall of light with armored force, but the power met him and forced him to retreat one hard step at a time. He was not defeated yet, but he could no longer reach the center. Lady Raven saw the same thing and slipped into the secret passage below the bridge before anyone could stop her. vanishing into the dark with one last cold glance over her shoulder. She had chosen her own path, and that path would matter later. Then the chamber changed again. A deep tone rolled through Crownhold, low and ancient, and the symbols across the floor began to spread outward in a wide ring. The world seal was recognizing a valid bearer, but it was still not fully awake. It needed one final alignment, and that alignment would require someone to go deeper into the hidden inner hall beneath the fortress. Aren stood beside the now stable Thunder Wolf frame, breathing hard but standing straight, and the machine remained linked to him like a guardian that had finally found its rider. Sarah looked at him with a mix of respect and worry because she could see that he had crossed from outsider to keykeeper in a single moment. Leo wiped dust from his face and realized with a nervous grin that their repairs had done more than save a machine. They had opened the true path forward. Master John placed one weathered hand on the panel and said that the fortress would not give up its secret until someone proved worthy of it. Victor, now pushed back but still unbroken, glared through the light and promised with his silence that he would not leave this place empty-handed. And far below, through the secret passage and beyond the shaking stone, the inner hall of Crownhold began to glow with a deeper light, as if something huge and ancient had just opened one eye. Aren felt that pull at once. The next step would not be about holding the line, it would be about entering the heart of the fortress where the true control frame waited and where the final choice would become even harder. So he took one more breath, looked at Sarah, Leo, and John, and moved forward with them toward the new darkness, while above them the sky network hummed like a storm trying to wake. The air inside Crownhold felt cold enough to slow thought, and every stone wall seemed to listen. Beneath the fortress, the hidden halls glowed with faint relic lines, while the deep hum above them rolled through the floor like distant thunder. Aren moved first, with his short black hair still damp from the cold mist, his dark eyes fixed ahead, and his lean body held steady even as the pressure around him grew. Captain Sarah followed close behind, her long brown hair tied back, her steel blue coat catching the pale light, and her face stayed firm because her people were depending on her. Leo walked on the other side, sandy blonde hair shaking with each step, his slim frame tense, his tool belts clinking softly, and his bright eyes kept scanning every joint, seal, and crack in the ancient stone. Master John brought up the rear, his thick white hair glowing silver in the relic light, his broad shoulders squared, and his rough hands ready to work if the fortress decided to wake in the wrong way. They were not just walking into a hall. They were walking toward the heart of the Sky Fortress network, where the true control frame waited, where the world seal had been chained together long ago, and where King Victor meant to turn the whole system into a weapon that only he could command. The deeper chamber opened in layers, and each layer looked older than the last. Broken bridges crossed over a black drop, moving platforms slid with tired metal groans, and relic symbols pulsed under dust that had not been touched in years. Sarah slowed near the first bridge and whispered that if Victor reached this place first, he could lock every sky route in the realm and starve Hale, Blackwatch, and every smaller city that depended on the fortress network for clean lift and stable power. That was the real danger, and it was worse than a simple attack. The Sky Network did not just connect cities. It kept them from falling into the living abyss below, and if its balance broke, whole districts could lose lift and drift out of control. Leo understood that at once because he had spent his life fixing broken engines and relay frames, and he could see that the control lines in the floor were damaged in ways that looked planned, not random. Someone had been stripping safety layers away piece by piece. Master John touched one glowing mark with 2 fingers and frowned because he recognized old forge language hidden inside the fortress code. Long ago, builders had made Crownhold as the final lock on the world seal, but they also built a failsafe, and that failsafe had been buried under layers of political greed. John said the truth with a heavy voice. Victor had not simply wanted power, he wanted certainty. He feared a realm that could not be fully ruled, so he had searched for the world seal to force the whole network into one command path. In his mind, control meant safety, and anything he could not command meant risk. That made him dangerous because he believed his cruelty was wisdom. A cold voice echoed from the dark gallery above them, and Lady Raven stepped into view on a narrow ledge lined with silver marks. Her silver black hair fell straight over her shoulders, her elegant face carried a calm and sharp expression, and her dark robes moved like a clean shadow around her metal panels. She looked polished, secretive, and perfectly at home in the relic chamber, as if she had known this place longer than any of them. Sarah raised her hand at once, ready to challenge her, because Raven had always felt like a person who spoke with careful truth wrapped around hidden intent. But Raven did not attack. She simply looked at Aren and said the next door would only open for someone the fortress accepted as a living answer. Leo started to protest, and John narrowed his eyes because that sounded like another trap. Then Raven surprised them by lifting her hand and sending a thin spirit engine thread into the wall, revealing a sealed passage beneath the bridge they had not seen before. She said she had guided them this far because Victor would break the seal through brute force, and that would awaken the network in a violent, uncontrolled way. Her motive was not kindness, and it was not loyalty. It was balance. Raven believed the fortress system should survive, even if the ruling power around it changed. She had watched Victor drain the city of trust, and she had chosen to steer Aren toward the hidden heart because only a careful hand could prevent the world seal from snapping shut around the wrong command. That was the first real twist of the chamber. The woman they had expected to fear was helping them, not because she was good, but because she had made a colder and more patient choice than Victor had. They entered the secret passage beneath the bridge, and the world changed at once. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and lined with rough old stone blocks that still held faint relic markings in the seams. Water dripped somewhere in the dark, and every step echoed like a warning. Leo moved in front now, his hands brushing along the walls as he searched for active lines, and he kept muttering that the passage had been built for repair crews, messengers, or someone desperate enough to trust old work. John agreed, and he pointed out the marks that showed quick access routes had once been used to keep the fortress running during war. Sarah stayed near Aren because she could feel how the chamber was changing him. He did not look afraid, but he was growing quieter, and that quiet meant his mind was pulling at something deep. Aren had already felt that strange pull when the deeper light awakened, and now it was stronger. The hidden passage led into a vast underground space where broken platforms stretched over a black shaft, and a massive silver shape stood partly embedded in the floor. The relic control frame was there at last, its wolf-inspired armor lines cracked, its dark lens panels dim, and its storm energy channels sleeping under layers of old dust. It was not fully dead. It was waiting. The instant Aren stepped near it, the control frame answered with a low pulse that shook the chamber. Blue light ran through its joints, then faded, then returned stronger, as if it had recognized him and was deciding whether to trust him. Aren felt the choice before anyone spoke it aloud. The frame was built to bind the Thunder Wolf relic body, and if he linked with it, he might command the fortress systems long enough to restore the world seal. But that same link could also let Victor seize the entire network if the wrong command reached the core first. Sarah saw the risk and wanted to shut the system down before anyone touched it. Leo wanted to repair it safely, one layer at a time, even if that took too long. John wanted to preserve the old balance because he knew every rushed fix in history had made a bigger crack somewhere else. And Raven wanted the seal contained, no matter which leader stood above the city. Then the chamber shook again, harder this time, and a distant metal boom rolled through the ceilings above them. Victor was getting closer. His troops had found the outer route, and the fortress was starting to respond to his forced entry. The moving platforms shifted, one bridge collapsed into darkness, and a storm line flashed across the far wall like a living vein. Raven turned sharply and said the next command was not about power. It was about trust. She told Aren that the frame would answer only if he made a clear choice in front of everyone because the ancient builders had designed it to reject greed and reward intent. That was the second reveal, and it changed everything. The fortress was not asking who was strongest. It was asking who was willing to carry the burden without using it for control. Aren stood before the glowing frame, and for a long moment he did nothing at all. He looked at Sarah, who had spent so long protecting people that she had almost forgotten how to trust them. He looked at Leo, whose nervous hands could fix anything except the fear of failure. He looked at John, whose tired wisdom had held broken systems together long after younger men would have given up. Then he looked at Raven, whose face held no warmth but whose choice had still given them a path. Above them, the sky network hummed louder, and the sound felt like a giant heart trying to beat through stone. Aren understood then that this was why the pull had grown stronger. The relic was not calling for a conqueror. It was calling for someone who could carry a hard truth and still move forward. He stepped closer, raised one hand, and placed it against the cold silver frame. The chamber answered with a sharp flash of blue light, and the dark lens panels opened one by one. Energy rushed through the broken channels, not smooth and easy, but wild and heavy, like a storm finding a road. Leo shouted that the frame was waking. John shouted for everyone to brace. Sarah stepped in without hesitation, ready to protect Aren if the system turned against him. And then the buried voice of the fortress spoke through the glow, low and ancient, asking the one question that mattered now. Who will hold the seal when the sky begins to break? Aren did not answer yet, because the question itself was only the beginning, and somewhere above them, King Victor was about to reach the same chamber from the other side. The chamber under Crown Hold was cold, deep, and full of a faint blue glow that moved like breathing light. Broken bridges crossed over a dark drop, and old relic symbols ran along the floor like warning lines. Aren stood near the center of that light, his short black hair still damp from the thin mist drifting through the stone halls, while his sharp dark eyes stayed locked on the silver frame that had begun to wake. Sarah, the woman with long brown hair and a steel blue coat, kept one step in front of him, because she knew the chamber might turn dangerous at any second. John, the broad older man with thick white hair, held his ground near the broken control pillar, and Leo, the sandy blonde mechanic, hovered close with trembling hands and wide bright eyes. They all understood the same truth now: the world seal was failing, and if it broke before the fortress was ready, the sky roots above Hale and every other city could collapse into the abyss. Then the buried voice spoke again through the light, low and ancient, and it made the whole chamber feel smaller. It did not shout, it did not rage, it only asked the question again, slow and heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. Who will hold the seal when the sky begins to break? John looked at Aren and nodded once, because he had already guessed that the answer would matter more than any tool, any key, or any order. Sarah shifted her stance and lifted her chin, ready to strike first if the frame turned wild. Leo swallowed hard and looked at the glowing lines across the floor, because he could see that the relic system was not simply turning on. It was choosing. Aren felt that choice press against his chest like a stone, and he finally understood why the fortress had not answered to Victor or to the other guards above. The seal did not want power. It wanted someone who could carry weight without breaking under it. Before Aren could answer, a hard metallic crash echoed from the upper stairway, and the air changed at once. A second path, hidden behind the old support wall, burst open with a burst of dust and blue sparks, and King Victor stepped into view with cold calm on his severe face. He wore his long black royal coat with silver trim, and his armored gloves were already clenched, as if he expected the chamber to obey him by force. Beside him moved Lady Raven, elegant and unreadable, her silver black hair falling over dark robes with metal panels and spirit engineer marks. She did not look surprised to see the chamber awake. In fact, she looked prepared. That made her more dangerous than Victor in that moment, because it meant she had known more than she had shared. Victor looked at Aren as if he were not a person at all, but a problem standing in the wrong place. He wanted the seal because he believed the Sky Cities needed a single ruler to keep them from tearing each other apart. He had watched the fortress network weaken, watched the bridges fail, and watched fear spread through Blackwatch and beyond. In his mind, mercy had already failed, so control was the only answer left. Lady Raven wanted the seal for a different reason, because she believed the ancient system could be used, tuned, and rewritten by the right hand. She wanted access, command, and proof that her hidden work could shape the world itself. The chamber reacted to Victor the moment he stepped forward. Blue lines flashed across the broken floor, and the relic frame, half buried in stone, began to rise. Its wolf-shaped armor plates shifted with a grinding sound, and one glowing blue eye lens opened in the dim air. The Thunder Wolf relic frame answered Aren first, as it had before, but now it also answered the chamber around it. That was the twist no one had expected. The frame was not only a test body. It was a key lock, a living part of the world's seal, and it would only fully awaken for someone the fortress recognized as a holder, not a controller. Leo saw it before the others did and shouted that the energy channels were linking to the whole chamber, not just the frame. John immediately backed him up, telling everyone to stay clear of the moving floor plates, because if the seals locked wrong, the chamber could shut them inside or break the path beneath them. Sarah moved in front of Aren again, her face hard with focus, because the moment Victor reached for the seal, the fight would begin. Victor did not wait. He raised one gloved hand, and the hidden guards who had followed him through the upper passage poured into the doorway behind him. Their dark armor shone under the relic light, and they spread out fast, trying to cut off the only safe exits. At the same time, Lady Raven lifted a small spirit engineer device from her sleeve, and its surface opened with thin rings of pale light. She spoke a few calm words into the device, and the chamber symbols flickered in answer. That was her true plan. She had not come only to support Victor. She had come to bend the chamber into a shape that would let her control both him and the seal. Yet the fortress did not obey so easily. The symbols on the floor burned brighter, and the Thunder Wolf frame began to move on its own, one step at a time, as if pulled by a deep memory. Its heavy arm lifted, and its storm lines filled with blue power. Aren felt the pull in his hands, the same strange echo he had felt before, and he realized the relic was waiting for him to choose trust over fear. Aren did not rush Victor. He did not try to prove himself with loud words. Instead, he looked at Sarah, John, and Leo, and he saw the choice in their faces. Sarah was ready to protect him even if it meant standing alone. John was ready to guide him even if the answer came from pain. Leo was scared, but he kept looking for the pattern that could save them all. Aren understood then that holding the seal did not mean ruling over it. It meant carrying it for others. He stepped forward, placed both gloved hands on the glowing frame, and let the chamber feel his steady will. The Thunder Wolf frame answered at once, and a wave of blue light spread across the broken hall. The floor plates locked into a new pattern, the dropped bridges lifted halfway, and the chamber opened a second path deeper below Crown Hold. Victor tried to force his way through the flare, but the light pushed him back, and his guards were forced to retreat for a moment as the system rejected their pressure. Lady Raven narrowed her eyes because she finally saw that the seal had chosen a holder, not a master. But the chamber did not fully settle. The buried voice spoke once more, and this time the meaning was clearer, almost cruel in its calm. It told Aren that one seal could not hold forever unless the rest of the fortress network was restored. That was the second revelation, and it changed everything. Crown Hold was not the final answer. It was only the center. The Sky Fortress network had been built in pieces, each city and bridge sharing the burden, and if too many pieces stayed broken, the world seal would fail no matter who touched it. John closed his eyes for a moment because he now understood the old repair marks he had seen in the chamber walls. This fortress had not been made for one king, it had been made for many hands. Victor, hearing that truth, lost some of his calm for the first time. He had believed the seal was a throne. Instead, it was a duty spread across the sky. Even so, Victor did not step aside. He drew his coat back, and the cold gray eyes on his sharp face hardened again. He ordered the guards to seal the lower path and take the chamber by force. Lady Raven raised her device a little higher, and the symbols around her flashed with unstable light. She knew the path below had opened, and she wanted it before anyone else could reach it. The chamber shook once, then twice, and a deep sound rolled through the stone like a warning from the fortress itself. Aren held the Thunder Wolf frame steady, his body tense but his mind clear, and for the first time since the beginning of the crisis, he did not look like an outsider at all. He looked like the one person the chamber had been waiting for. Sarah moved to his side, John signaled Leo toward the newly opened path, and the four of them formed a line between the relic light and Victor's advancing shadow. Above them, the broken Sky Fortress groaned. Below them, the dark root of the network opened wider, and somewhere deeper in the ancient system, a second lock began to wake. The battle was not over. It had only moved to a lower level, where the next answer was waiting in the dark. The lower level of Crown Hold felt colder than the hall above it, and the air carried a damp metal smell that clung to the skin. Broken stone ribs crossed the ceiling, pale relic lights flashed in slow beats, and the deep floor beneath them trembled like a giant machine waking after a long sleep. Aren stood at the front with his dark jacket tight on his lean frame, his short black hair damp with dust, and his sharp dark eyes fixed ahead. Sarah stood close beside him, her long brown hair tied back and her steel blue military coat shining in the low light, while Leo hovered on the other side with sandy blonde hair, a tool belt bouncing at his hips, and worry written all over his bright face. John came last in the line, broad-shouldered and steady, his thick white hair glowing under the relic light, his forge apron dark with soot, and his serious eyes watching the shadows for danger. They were not here by choice, and they all understood the same hard truth, because the second lock had begun to wake, and if Victor reached it first, he could take control of the world seal and twist the whole fortress network for his own rule. That was the danger now, clear and simple, and every step below Crown Hold could decide whether the Sky Cities stayed safe or fell into chaos. A faint hum rolled through the corridor, and the walls answered with thin lines of blue light that ran under the stone like veins. Leo knelt beside a cracked control strip in the floor, his gloved hands moving with careful speed as he studied the old relic marks. He was the youngest of the four, but he mattered more than anyone wanted to admit, because he understood old machine systems better than most trained officers, and his skill could open paths no soldier could force. He looked up and pointed toward a narrow turn where the passage split in two, and he swallowed hard before speaking. He said that one path led toward the lower lock chamber, while the other led toward a service bridge that might let them circle around Victor. Sarah did not waste time, she asked what he trusted. Leo stared at the flickering lines, then chose the left route because the right side showed power spikes that felt wrong. John nodded at once, trusting the boy because John had spent his life fixing broken things and he knew the sound of a system under stress. Aren listened without interrupting, and that mattered because he was the one who had first answered the Thunder Wolf relic frame, and the same strange resonance still lived inside him. It was not magic in the childish sense, but a deep rule of the fortress network, a spirit-based link that answered calm minds, steady hands, and honest intent. That was why Aren had become important. The fortress did not wake for power alone, it woke for balance. Then the corridor shook and a sharp voice echoed behind them, cold and clean, as Victor ordered them to stop running. Victor stepped from the darkness with the same controlled calm that always made him seem more dangerous than a loud enemy ever could. His neat black hair stayed perfect under the moving light, his gray eyes looked hard and empty, and his long black royal coat with silver trim moved only a little as he walked. Beside him came Lady Raven, and she drew the eye at once because she looked polished and sharp in flowing dark robes that held metal panels and thin spirit engineer markings. Her silver-black hair fell smoothly around her elegant face, and the small device in her hand, a polished spirit engineer scanner with blue rings, pulsed as she watched the walls. She was not here simply to help Victor. She wanted control of the fortress system itself, because she believed the world seal could be tuned into a perfect engine, one that would make Blackwatch stronger and keep every sky route under strict command. Victor wanted the same seal for a different reason. He wanted order through fear, because he believed chaos always followed freedom, and he planned to place every city under his rule before the broken network could collapse on its own. His motive was cold, but it made sense in the same cruel way that storms made sense. He feared a world without control more than he feared the harm of his own methods. Behind them, a Victor guard in heavy black armor moved with military discipline, his dark hair hidden under a closed helmet, and his only job was to block escape and obey every command. Victor raised one armored hand and spoke as if he were offering reason instead of threat, saying that the lower lock was unstable, that the network was already failing, and that only his hand could hold it together. Sarah almost laughed at that, but she stayed focused. She knew Victor liked to twist fear into a lie that sounded like help. Then Raven lifted her scanner and the relic markings on the walls brightened because she was already trying to read the system before they even moved. Aren felt the pull of the fortress before anyone else did. It came through the floor in a low pulse, and the pulse matched something deep inside him, the same steady answer he had felt when the Thunder Wolf relic frame first awakened for him. He did not fully understand it, but he understood enough to know that the system recognized him as more than a stranger. The broken Thunder Wolf relic frame, now stored in a side chamber above, had once been a test body, a failed first shell for a greater guardian. John had told him that it was built to respond to spirit resonance, and that the old engineers had used it to test who could guide the fortress without breaking it. That had seemed like a useful detail before, but now it felt like a warning. If Victor used the lower lock without the right balance, the system could lock down the entire Sky Fortress network and trap every city route in a frozen state. Worse, the World Seal could overreact, shut down the open paths, and leave whole regions cut off from supply and rescue. So the stakes were bigger than one fortress, bigger than one fight, and bigger than any one king. Victor wanted rule, Raven wanted perfect control, John wanted the system repaired before it failed. Sarah wanted the people of Hale and every other sky city protected. Leo wanted to prove that his hands could still build something useful, not just fix scraps in the forge. And Aren, though he had begun as a quiet outsider with no title and no claim, now carried the hardest task of all, because the relic system was waiting for someone steady enough to choose balance over power. Then the floor split open ahead and the hidden route below the bridge revealed itself, a narrow, secret passage beneath the stone, dark and cold, lined with old markings that had not seen light for ages. They moved at once. Sarah led with quick military steps, her watchful face hard as steel, while John motioned Leo forward, telling him to keep his hands ready for anything the passage might throw at them. Aren followed close behind, his dark eyes never leaving the glowing line in the floor because every pulse seemed to call to him like a warning and an invitation at the same time. Behind them, Victor did not rush. He did not need to. He simply walked forward with a cruel patience, while Raven stayed half a step beside him and scanned the walls with her device, looking for a way to bend the network to her design. The secret passage beneath the bridge was only wide enough for one person at a time, and the stone blocks sweated cold water from the ceiling. Old relic symbols blinked faintly across the walls, and in that dim light the group could hear the lower lock chamber beginning to open ahead of them. Then from far below, a deep metallic note rolled through the fortress, and the sound made every person stop for one beat. It was not the sound of a normal machine. It was the sound of a massive system recognizing new pressure and preparing to answer. John whispered that the inner hall was near, and that once they entered it, the real choice would begin. Sarah glanced back once, saw Victor still following, and tightened her jaw. She knew the enemy would not turn back. Victor believed the world needed a single hand on the wheel, and he would not stop unless the fortress itself rejected him. Then the passage ended at a stair cut into black stone, and the four allies stepped down together into a vast chamber below Crown Hold, where broken bridges crossed a deep drop and old relic platforms waited in silence. At the far end, half buried in the floor, stood a silver frame with dark lens panels and cracked armor lines, shaped like a wolf built for storm energy and waiting for someone to awaken it. Aren felt his chest tighten because the frame was not dead, it was watching. And when his hand moved toward the first glowing mark in the floor, the whole chamber answered with one sudden pulse, as if the lower lock had just recognized the person it had been waiting for all along. Victor saw the same light, and for the first time his calm face changed. He had expected a simple door. Instead, he had found a judgment. The chamber lights flared, the hidden platforms began to shift, and somewhere deeper inside the ancient system, another seal stirred awake, holding its next secret just out of reach. The chamber beneath Crown Hold felt colder now, as if the whole fortress had taken one deep breath and was waiting to see who would move first. The hidden platforms slid with slow metal groans, and the glowing lines in the floor spread out like veins of light across black stone. Aren stood at the center of it all, with short black hair, sharp dark eyes, and a calm face that did not match the danger around him. He looked like an ordinary outsider in a dark jacket and fingerless gloves, yet every part of him stayed steady, because he knew that fear would only help Victor. Beside him, Captain Sarah kept her steel blue coat tight around her armor, her long brown hair tied back as she watched every shift in the room. Leo, with sandy blonde hair and a nervous, focused face, crouched near the edge of a platform and gripped his tools like they were the only safe thing left in the world. Master John, broad-shouldered and strong in his dark forge apron, stood behind them with his white hair lit by the floor glow, and his serious eyes told the others that he had seen enough ancient danger to know this was not a simple lock. Above the broken bridges and moving stone, King Victor watched with his neat black hair, cold gray eyes, and tall royal coat, and for the first time his perfect control cracked. He had come to claim a doorway, a weapon, and a path to rule the sky roots. Instead, the chamber had answered Aren, not him, and the silence that followed felt like the first sign of a much larger judgment. Lady Raven moved first. Her silver black hair caught the light as she lifted her small spirit engineer device, and its blue rings began to spin over the floor marks. She wore flowing dark robes with metal panels, and her expression stayed cool, careful, and almost pleased, as if this surprise only gave her more pieces to work with. She had no love for Victor, and she had even less love for chaos. Her goal was simple, even if her methods were not. She believed the world seal could be tuned, measured, and guided, and if she could control the relic system before it fully awakened, she could decide which city in the sky would survive. To her, that was not cruelty, it was planning. The device in her hand gave a thin hum, and she stepped around the glowing mark that had already chosen Aren. Victor turned his head toward her and said nothing, but his jaw tightened, because he knew she was reading the chamber for her own future. The first hidden seal had opened partway, and now the chamber was asking a deeper question. Who had the right to touch the heart of the world? That question mattered because the Sky Fortress network had held the floating cities together for generations, and if the wrong hand forced the seal open, the old balance could fail, and the cities above the abyss could begin to drift apart. Aren understood that at once. He also understood something else. The relic was not testing strength alone, it was testing purpose. That was why the floor had answered him, and that was why Victor looked angry instead of victorious. The chamber changed again before anyone could speak. A ring of stone panels rose from the floor, then turned, then locked into a new shape that opened a narrow passage under the central bridge. Cold air pushed out from the darkness below, and old relic markings flickered along the walls like waking eyes. Leo leaned forward first, because he was the one who could never stop looking at a broken machine and wondering how it worked. He had sandy blonde hair, quick hands, and a mechanic mind that always searched for the next hidden gear. "That tunnel is not natural," he said, his voice low and tight, "but it is part of the system." Master John nodded once, and his thick white hair moved against the shadow as he answered that ancient builders loved secret paths when they wanted truth to travel unseen. Sarah did not like the dark tunnel, but she liked Victor even less, so she gave a sharp order and told Leo to stay close while she checked the way ahead. Aren stepped toward the tunnel entrance, and the chamber answered him again with a short pulse of light. That pulse did not feel like a welcome now, it felt like a warning. Victor saw it too. His eyes narrowed and his calm voice turned colder as he ordered his Victor guard to spread out. The stern, armored man with dark hair and a closed helmet moved at once, heavy boots striking stone as he took position near the bridge. Victor had brought him for force, but force was becoming less useful by the second. The world seal was awakening in layers, and each layer was revealing that the relic did not belong to the crown. It belonged to the realm itself. Then the truth began to show through the chamber in pieces. Lady Raven scanned the floor with her device, and the blue lines in the air formed a rough map of the fortress network. She saw the lower seal, the hidden passage, and the marks that connected Crown Hold to the rest of the Sky Fortress chain. But she also saw one line that made her face go still. The line did not point to Victor's command chamber. It pointed to a deeper chamber below, one that had been hidden behind the others. She turned the device again, tried a second scan, and the same result returned. That made the answer clear. The world seal had been built with a second heart, and that heart was not meant for a ruler who wanted control. It was meant for a keeper who could bring balance back when the network began to fail. Victor noticed her pause, and for a moment his voice lost its smooth edge. He asked what she found, but she did not answer right away. She was smart enough to understand that a truth like this could break a kingdom faster than any blade. Aren looked at the lines, then at the floor, and he remembered every strange thing the relic had done since the first mark lit up for him. It was never only reacting, it was recognizing. That meant the chamber had been waiting for him for a reason, and that reason was larger than his own life. He had started this journey as an outsider who only wanted answers, but now he stood in the middle of a sealed judgment that could decide the future of the floating cities. That was the moment his fear changed. He was still afraid, but he was no longer confused. He lifted his head and stepped toward the hidden passage, because someone had to keep moving forward, and no one else in the room was willing to trust the chamber enough to follow the path it opened. Victor moved at the same time. He had spent too many years believing that every door could be controlled if enough guards stood beside it. The chamber had already challenged that belief, and he hated it. His motive was easy to understand, even if his methods were harsh. He ruled Blackwatch through fear because he believed fear kept people from tearing the Skyroots apart in panic. To him, order was worth almost any price. If the World Seal could lock the network forever, then he could force every city to obey one command and stop the floating realm from falling into chaos. But the chamber had made one thing clear. The system did not care about his belief. It cared about balance. Victor ordered his guard forward, and the armored man lunged to block Aren from the tunnel. Sarah met him first, her watchful face hardening as she drew him away from the passage with a sharp clash of steel and shield. She did not aim to hurt him more than needed. She aimed to hold him back because she knew time mattered now. Leo rushed to the side panel and jammed one tool into a narrow seam, trying to freeze the shifting bridge before it moved again. Master John shouted for him to be careful, then used his own heavy strength to brace a broken support so the others would not be trapped when the floor shifted again. Above them, the chamber lights flared brighter, and the second seal deeper below answered with another slow pulse. That pulse rolled through the stone, through the bridge, and through every person there, as if the fortress itself had just taken notice of the conflict. Aren reached the tunnel opening, and then the floor beneath him displayed one final line of light, a clear path leading downward. It did not give him a full answer, but it gave him enough. He was not meant to open the world's seal alone. He was meant to begin the awakening, then guide the others through what came next. The strange thing about the hidden passage was that it did not feel like escape. It felt like a test inside the test. The stone walls were damp, the relic marks were old, and every step echoed as if another room waited to hear them fail. Sarah forced the armored guard back one more time, then fell in beside Aren, her long brown hair brushing her collar as she kept her eyes on the darkness ahead. Leo followed, breathing fast, but still watching the moving lines in case he could save them from a collapse. Master John came last, steady and wide, with the quiet strength of a man who knew that some repairs had to be made under pressure. Victor did not enter at once. He stood at the chamber edge with his black coat hanging straight, and for the first time he looked less like a ruler and more like a man who had just found out he might be too small for the truth in front of him. Lady Raven watched him from the side, her silver-black hair framing a face that showed almost no emotion, but her eyes were alive with calculation. She had seen enough now to know that the lower seal had chosen its next path, and that path did not belong to Victor. She also knew that if Aren reached the next chamber first, the relic system might reveal something that would change the whole balance of power in the sky. So while the others moved into the passage, she quietly saved the readings from her device, already planning how to use them later. The chamber behind them shuddered once more, and the bridge they had crossed began to rise and turn, sealing the route they had just left. That meant there was no easy way back now. The next chamber was not just deeper underground. It was deeper into the truth. And as Aren led the way into the cold, dark tunnel, the light on the floor behind him faded into a thin line, while somewhere far below, the next seal answered with a slow, waking pulse, waiting for the person who would dare to face it next. The cold tunnel swallowed every sound as Aren moved first, with Captain Sarah close behind him and Leo pressing in from the rear. The secret passage beneath the bridge was narrow, damp, and lined with old stone blocks that had been cut by hands long gone. Water ran in thin trails down the walls, and faint relic markings glowed now and then like tired eyes opening in the dark. Above them, Crownhold groaned with deep shifting weight, and far beyond it, the floating city of Hale still hovered over the black abyss, held together by wind gates, old stone, and fear. Aren knew the problem was no longer simple survival. The bridge had sealed itself behind them, which meant King Victor had not just trapped them in a fortress. He had trapped them inside a history that someone wanted buried forever. If they failed now, the Sky Fortress network could collapse into panic, and the world seal below them could wake in the wrong way. That would not just weaken the cities. It could break the balance that kept the living abyss back, and nobody in Hale, Blackwatch, or Crownhold would stay safe for long. Captain Sarah kept her hand near her weapon and her face hard, but her eyes still searched every shadow. She was a woman with long brown hair, pale skin, and a steel-blue military coat that marked her as a city defender who had carried too much responsibility for too many years. She did not trust surprises, and this tunnel was full of them. Leo followed with quick steps, his sandy blonde hair damp at the ends, his soot-stained vest darkening in the cold air, and his tool belts clinking softly against his slim mechanic frame. He wanted to prove that his hands and his mind could still fix what war had broken, and this moment mattered because the locks and seals ahead were clearly made for someone with his skill. Behind him came Master John, the older repair master with thick white hair, broad shoulders, and a dark forge apron that had seen years of sparks, pressure, and hard choices. He had come because he understood relic systems better than most people alive, and because he knew that if the truth was hidden beneath Crownhold, then it had been hidden by builders who feared what greedy rulers might do with it. Aren led them all, but he was not simply guiding them through stone. He was carrying the burden of every choice the fortress had forced onto him since the first relic answered his touch. He had short black hair, sharp dark eyes, a lean build, and a calm face that hid fast thinking and stubborn resolve. He looked like an outsider, yet the tunnel itself seemed to lean toward him, as if some old system inside the world remembered him before anyone else did. The next chamber opened without warning. It was not large in a normal way, but vast in the way that mattered, with broken bridges hanging over a deep black drop and moving platforms sliding slowly along hidden tracks. Glowing relic symbols pulsed in the floor, the walls, and the arches above, while old chains hung motionless as if the air itself had forgotten how to move. In the center of the chamber stood a broken silver frame, half embedded in stone, with dark lens panels, cracked armor, storm energy channels, and wolf-shaped lines carved into every hard edge. It looked like a machine waiting for a name. Leo stopped so fast that his boots scraped stone, and Master John let out a low breath because he knew exactly what he was seeing. This was another control frame, older than the rest and far more important. The chamber was part workshop, part prison, and part test hall for something the world no longer fully understood. Aren felt the same pull he had felt before, the same quiet call that had brought the Thunder Wolf relic frame to life. The difference now was worse. This frame was not just waiting, it was reacting. A thin blue light moved across its cracked surface, and the entire hall answered with a slow pulse from somewhere below. The seal was awake, and it was listening. Then the voice of King Victor reached them through the chamber, smooth and cold, carried through hidden speakers built into the old stone. Victor had neat black hair, cold gray eyes, a severe face, and a long black royal coat with silver trim that made him look like a ruler carved from hard judgment. He was not angry, that made him more dangerous. He explained with calm patience that the Sky Fortress network had never been only a chain of cities. It had been a lock built long ago to hold back the living abyss and to keep the world's seal balanced. The people above had always been told that the fortresses were their shield, but Victor had learned the truth long before he took Blackwatch. The seal depended on three things working together: the fortress roots, the spirit-tuned relic frames, and the trust of the cities. He wanted control because he believed only one strong ruler could keep the system stable. In his mind, freedom had always been the danger, because divided cities would fight over the relics, misuse the seals, and bring ruin faster than any enemy could. That was his motive, and it made a cold sort of sense. Yet his next words revealed the cruelty beneath it. He said he no longer needed the old balance. If he could seize Crown Hold and turn the world's seal to his will, he could control every sky route, every gate, and every city that depended on them. He would not be saving Hale, he would be owning it. As his voice faded, Victor guards began to emerge from side passages, their heavy black armor catching the dim light, their helmets blank and unreadable. Sarah moved in front of Leo at once, and Master John stepped to the side of the broken frame, ready to shield the others if the chamber turned hostile. But before anyone could clash with the guards, another voice joined the darkness, soft, polished, and far more unsettling. Lady Raven stepped into view from the upper platform, and the chamber seemed to sharpen around her. She was a woman with silver black hair, elegant features, cold confidence, and flowing dark robes fitted with metal panels and spirit engineer markings. Her polished boots touched the stone without sound, and in one hand she carried a small spirit engineer device with silver sides, glowing blue rings, and etched symbols that spun slowly as she aimed it at the relic frame. She had the calm of someone who knew exactly how systems worked and exactly how to bend them. Unlike Victor, who wanted control through force, Raven wanted it through understanding. She explained that the frame before them was part of a test body, an early vessel used to teach the world's seal how to recognize safe resonance. She had studied the old records, and she had found what the builders feared most. The seal did not wake for power alone. It woke for people who matched the right pattern of trust, memory, and intent. That was why so many rulers had failed to master it. They had seen the fortress network as a weapon, but it had always been a living system built to reject greed. Raven smiled then, thin and knowing, and said something that changed the air in the room. She did not serve Victor because she believed in his vision. She served him because he promised her access to the deepest chamber beneath Crown Hold, where the original control language was hidden. She wanted the truth for herself, and she was willing to let the world bend if it helped her reach it. That was the twist no one had expected. Raven was not only an enemy. She was a seeker, and she understood the buried system better than Victor did. Aren moved closer to the frame, and the Thunder Wolf relic frame answered from deep within the tunnel behind them, sending a low storm hum through the floor. The connection was instant, almost like recognition, and it told everyone something important. Aren was not chosen by accident. The old systems were responding to him because he matched the hidden pattern the builders had left behind. He did not fully understand what that meant yet, but he understood enough to know that the seal was not a simple lock. It was a judgment. The chamber was designed to test whether a person would use power to rule or to protect. That was why the chamber had remained hidden for so long. The world had been waiting for a person who could carry both strength and restraint. Leo, seeing the control rings on Raven's device, whispered that he might be able to redirect the chamber systems if Sarah could keep the guards back for a few seconds. Master John answered at once, telling him to stay focused and not waste a single motion. Sarah gave one sharp nod, then turned with military discipline as the Victor guards rushed the platform. The fight that followed was fast, tense, and controlled. Steel struck stone, boots slid over glowing lines, and the old chamber lights flashed in hard white bursts as the moving platforms shifted without warning. No one fell. No one was destroyed. Instead, the guards were pushed back and forced to retreat under the sudden pressure of the chamber itself. Raven watched it all with narrowed eyes, clearly more interested in the relic frame than in Victor or his men. That made her even harder to read, because she had already decided that the chamber mattered more than any person standing inside it. Aren reached the broken silver frame at the center and placed both hands on its cracked armor. The moment he did, the chamber opened its memory. Light spread through the storm channels, blue at first, then white, then deep gold, and shapes of old builders appeared in thin layers across the air like fragments of a lost recording. They were not ghosts, they were preserved instructions left behind by the first protectors of the seal. Master John gasped as the words became clear enough to understand. The Sky Fortress network had been built by people who knew the abyss was not just empty space. It was pressure, hunger, and movement without end, waiting under the world. The fortresses were anchors, not thrones, and Crownhold was the heart of the whole design. If one ruler took it for greed, the entire network would start to fail in stages, beginning with the seals and ending with the routes between cities. Aren felt the truth settle inside him like a heavy stone. Victor had not merely attacked the cities to conquer them. He had been pushing every fortress toward a crisis so he could force the world seal to answer to him when it woke. That meant the danger was bigger than a single battle. It meant every move Victor had made, every arrest, every blockade, and every false promise had been part of one long plan. Sarah understood it at once, and her expression changed from anger to grim certainty. Leo looked sick with worry because he knew that if the frame activated fully, there might be no simple way to shut it down again. Then the chamber shuddered harder and the broken frame lifted a little from the stone, as if something below had begun to breathe. A line of light opened in the floor, narrow at first, then wider, revealing a deeper passage into the core below Crownhold. The secret they had chased was no longer hidden. It was opening under their feet. Victor ordered his guards forward, but the chamber answered first, throwing out a wave of storm light that forced them back. Raven raised her spirit engineer device and began scanning the symbols, her face sharp with focus, while she muttered that the inner hall was finally responding. She had found what she came for, but even she looked uneasy now, because the system was reacting to Aren in a way no record had prepared her for. The old builders had left one final rule inside the seal, and it was simple enough for anyone to understand. The person who awakened the core would have to choose whether the fortress network would serve power or balance. Aren looked at Sarah, then at Leo, then at Master John, and he finally understood that his choice was not about proving himself. It was about protecting people who trusted him. He stepped toward the opening with a steady breath, while the Thunder Wolf relic frame hummed above him like a watching guardian. Behind him, Victor gathered his forces for another push, and Raven kept her device trained on the glowing marks as if she was ready to rewrite the chamber the moment she found the key. Ahead of him, the inner hall of Crownhold waited in silence, deep and dark and alive. The seal had opened its first answer, and the next truth was already calling from below. The inner hall of Crownhold opened like a sleeping giant taking one slow breath, and the cold air rushed out with a low, deep hum. Broken stone bridges crossed over a dark drop, old relic symbols glowed under the floor, and thin streams of blue light moved through the walls like veins. Aren stood at the edge of the opening with his short black hair still damp from the mist, his sharp dark eyes fixed ahead, and his lean body held steady even as the hall seemed to watch him back. He was the kind of young man who looked plain at first glance, but his calm face always hid a fast mind and a stronger will. Behind him, Captain Sarah stood with her long brown hair tied back, her steel blue coat marked by dust and battle wear, and her posture straight as a blade. She was a city defender who had learned to keep fear behind discipline, and she mattered because she knew how to hold a line when others wanted to run. Beside her, Leo, with sandy blonde hair and a soot-stained work vest, tightened his gloves with nervous hands and careful eyes. He wanted to understand every machine in the fortress, and his skill with tools made him vital now. Master John, broad-shouldered and weathered, with thick white hair and a dark forge apron over his plain shirt, watched the hall with a serious calm. He had repaired too many relic systems to trust a miracle, and he knew the seal below was old enough to punish mistakes. The problem was clear to all of them now. Crownhold had opened part of the world seal, and if they failed here, the fortress network could collapse into the abyss below, leaving Hale and every other sky city exposed to ruin. At the same time, Victor and Raven were closing in, and both of them wanted the same power for very different reasons, which made the danger even worse. Aren stepped forward first because the Thunder Wolf relic frame above him had begun to hum in answer to the chamber. The silver mech body hung from a damaged support arch, one blue eye lens burning with steady light, and its cracked shoulder plate pulsed with storm energy that matched the glow under the floor. It was not fully repaired, but it was awake enough to guide him, and that meant the hall had accepted him as part of its old system. Victor's voice echoed from the entrance behind them, cold and controlled, as the King of Blackwatch gathered his armored guards for another push. Victor wore a long black royal coat with silver trim, and his severe face held no anger at all, only the quiet certainty of a man who believed everything should belong to him. He wanted Crown Hold because the Sky Fortress network was the last thing standing between the realm and chaos, and if he controlled the seal, he could control the routes, the cities, and every trade path in the sky. His logic was cruel but simple. He believed order was worth any cost, even if that cost was freedom. Near him stood the Victor Guard, a stern man with dark hair hidden under a closed helmet, black armor, and an iron shoulder plate that caught the blue light from the hall. The guard and the soldiers behind him shifted into formation, ready to force the opening if Victor ordered it. On the other side of the chamber, Lady Raven lifted her spirit-engineered device, a small silver tool with circular light rings and glowing blue panels. Her silver-black hair framed a cold, elegant face, and her dark robes moved like shadows as she stepped closer to the glowing marks. Raven wanted more than Victor's order. She wanted control over the fortress system itself because she believed the ancient seal could be rewritten, tuned, and bent into a new shape. She had spent years studying spirit traces, and in her mind the old rules were not sacred, only unfinished. That was why she mattered so much in this moment. Victor wanted rule through force, but Raven wanted rule through understanding, and her kind of hunger could be even more dangerous. She watched Aren, the hall, and the relic frame at the same time, waiting for the right second to steal the truth from under everyone else. The floor beneath Aren shifted as he stepped onto the first moving platform, and the hall answered with a wave of light. Thin lines crossed the stone, formed into a wolf shape, and spread outward toward 3 sealed doors hidden in the dark walls. Leo gasped and pointed at the markings, then quickly pulled out a small work light from his belt. He was scared, but he was still useful because his careful eyes found patterns that others missed. Master John leaned down and traced one glowing line with a rough finger, then shook his head once. He understood enough to know that the chamber was not just a room, but a test. The world seal was built like a lock with many parts, and each part needed a different answer from the fortress network before it would open safely. That was the real twist no one had seen until now. Crown Hold was not hiding a treasure chamber or a simple weapon. It was hiding a living control system for the Abyss Barrier itself, and the Thunder Wolf relic frame was not only a tool. It was a key body, an early test form made to speak to the seal through storm energy and spirit resonance. Aren felt the truth settle into him with a chill. If the relic frame was a key body, then someone long ago had built it for a human pilot, not for a machine alone. That meant the fortress expected a person with will, not just power. Sarah moved beside him and said quietly that whatever came next, they would face it together. Her voice was firm, but her eyes were worried, because she could see the hall was waking in sections, and every answer from one door might trigger a new danger from another. In the back passage, Victor's guards began pressing forward through the secret route under the bridge, and the sound of their boots carried through the stone like a warning drum. Raven, seeing the glow shift, narrowed her eyes and adjusted the device, trying to read the chamber faster than the seal could react. The air grew heavier, the blue light brighter, and the first platform started to move toward the lower hall below. Aren did not rush this time. He remembered every hard lesson from the road, every broken part, every moment when panic would have ruined what patience could save. He closed his eyes for one breath, placed his hand on the glowing floor mark, and let the Thunder Wolf relic frame answer through him. The chamber reacted at once. A deep pulse rolled through the hall, the hidden bridges locked into place for a moment, and a ring of symbols rose from the floor around the central drop. High above, the relic frame shifted its head a few degrees like a guardian choosing trust. The world seal had accepted a second layer of contact. That was when the next revelation struck. A low voice, neither fully human nor fully machine, echoed from the chamber wall and spoke in broken but clear words about balance, not conquest. It said the seal had once been guarded by the city founders, and that they had divided the control among sky fortresses so no single ruler could use it alone. Victor heard only control and power, and his eyes sharpened with anger because the system denied his claim. Raven heard the deeper meaning at once. Her cold expression changed for a single instant, not into fear but into excitement, because she realized the seal could be rewritten if she reached its core pattern. She had not come to serve Victor forever. She had come because she believed the old system could be remade under her hands. That was the hidden danger inside her. She was not loyal to the king, only to the idea of becoming the one person who could command the sky. Victor gave a sharp order and his guards rushed through the passage beneath the bridge. Sarah moved to block the nearest path, Leo scrambled to hold a side panel steady, and Master John shouted for everyone to stay clear of the moving ring. The chamber began to open downward, the central platform lowering toward a darker level below, and the hall shook as if the fortress itself was deciding whether to help or resist. The clash came fast, but it was not a clean battle. It was a struggle for space, timing, and control. Sarah held the line with disciplined steps, forcing Victor's first guard wave back from the bridge edge. Her steel blue coat flashed under the blue light, and though she feared the collapse of the hall, she never let her stance break. Leo used his tools to jam a side gear before it could lock, saving the group from a sudden trap that would have sealed the way behind them. Master John, with his deep forge knowledge, recognized a power cycle that was about to overload, and he shouted for Aren to follow the rhythm instead of fighting it. Aren listened because by now he had learned that strength without trust was useless. He moved with the pulse of the chamber, and each step made the light align more clearly. At the same time, Raven advanced to a raised console on the far side, her spirit engineer device sending thin blue beams across the symbols. She was trying to copy the seal pattern into her own device, and for a brief second it looked as if she might succeed. Then the hall answered her attempt with a harsh flash and her device sparked, showing that the seal was rejecting forced control. Raven did not retreat. She only smiled, cold and certain, because now she knew where the real core had to be. Victor saw the same thing and became more impatient, which made him more dangerous. He did not care if the hall broke, as long as he got what he wanted before anyone else. The lower platform finally settled with a heavy thud, revealing a deeper path into the inner hall, where more relic symbols waited under a curtain of darkness. Aren looked down into that dark opening and felt both fear and resolve at once. The fortress was not done speaking. The first truth had opened, the second truth had answered, and the next one was waiting below. As Victor gathered his forces for another push and Raven kept her device ready for another attempt, Aren stepped toward the deeper hall with the Thunder Wolf relic frame glowing overhead, knowing that whatever lived at the core of Crownhold would change everything they thought they understood. The inner hall of Crownhold waited like a sleeping giant beneath the fortress, cold air moving through broken stone and old metal. Long relic lamps glowed with a weak blue light, and their beams cut across narrow bridges, hanging cables, and black gaps that seemed to breathe below. Aren stood at the edge of the opening with his short black hair lifted by the draft, his dark eyes steady even as the floor trembled under his boots. Behind him, Captain Sarah, a woman with long brown hair and a firm face, kept one hand near her weapon and one eye on every shadow. Leo, a young man with sandy blonde hair and a nervous face, checked his tools with fast, careful hands. Master John, the older man with thick white hair and a heavy forge apron, stared into the hall with the calm of someone who had repaired too many broken things to panic now. They all knew the danger in the same simple way, because if Crownhold woke the wrong way, the whole sky route network could fail, and every floating city could fall into the living abyss. King Victor also understood the stakes, but he understood them through fear and control. He stood farther back with his neat black hair and cold gray eyes, wearing his long black royal coat like a blade made of cloth. At his side, Victor Guard soldiers formed a hard wall of black armor, silent and disciplined. Victor believed the world seal belonged under one strong hand, because in his mind weakness had already nearly destroyed the realm. He wanted Crownhold to obey him, not because he loved power for its own sake, but because he feared chaos more than cruelty. Lady Raven stood close to him, her silver black hair falling over dark robes with metal panels, her expression calm and unreadable. She carried her polished spirit engineer device in one hand, and the glowing rings around it turned slowly as she studied the chamber. Raven wanted something different from Victor. She did not trust the old order, and she did not trust Victor either. She wanted the core of Crownhold because she believed the person who understood the fortress first would decide the future of the sky. That made her dangerous because she was smart, patient, and ready to turn any truth into advantage. Aren stepped forward before either side could move first. The Thunder Wolf relic frame, now partly repaired and standing high above on a broken support platform, answered his motion with a low pulse of blue light. Its one glowing eye lens turned toward the deeper chamber, and storm lines across its silver frame flickered as if it remembered the path below. Aren had begun this journey like an outsider with little more than calm eyes and stubborn will, but every step through the fortress had shaped him into something harder and clearer. He was no longer just reacting to danger. He was learning how to face truth without turning away. The others followed when he descended the first narrow stair, and the old stone groaned softly under their weight. Along the walls, faint symbols showed a pattern that Master John recognized from the old relic records. He said the fortress was not a simple machine, but a layered lock built to respond to choice, distance, and trust. That was why brute force had failed before. The world seal did not open for the strongest hand. It opened for the right sequence, the right balance, and the right heart. Victor hated that idea at once because it meant he could not simply take what he wanted. The next chamber opened around them in a wide circle of dark stone and silver rails. In the middle stood a broken relic control frame, half sunk into the floor, its armor cracked and its lens panels dark. Beside it floated a ring of thin metal plates, each one marked with symbols that Leo immediately recognized as control paths. He crouched down, his work vest stained with soot, and muttered that the frame was waiting for a spirit signal, but the signal was split in too many pieces. Raven lifted her spirit engineer device and began to scan the chamber, her eyes narrowing as the rings of light shifted faster. She discovered something that made her pause. The chamber was not simply a core room. It was a test room made to measure who would try to command the fortress and who would try to understand it. She told the others that the system would not reward force, it would punish it. That was the first real twist, and it changed the air in the room at once. Victor heard the warning and his jaw tightened, because he realized the fortress itself had been built to resist men like him. He had spent years believing the sky survived because strong rulers kept order. Now the ancient walls seemed to say that order without trust was only another kind of ruin. Before anyone could answer, a deep sound rolled through the chamber, low and sharp like thunder trapped inside stone. The floor plates shifted, and a hidden bridge rose a little from the darkness below, revealing a narrow path toward a deeper heart chamber. At the same time, the Thunder Wolf relic frame answered more strongly than before, sending a wave of blue light across the hall. Aren felt that pulse in his chest, not as pain, but as a clear call. He understood then that the relic frame was not just a weapon or test body. It was a key, and perhaps the first body the fortress had ever accepted as a partner. That discovery gave him hope, but it also made everyone nervous, because if the frame could open the chamber, then the chamber was ready to reveal something none of them had seen yet. Sarah moved beside Aren and spoke in a low voice, telling him that if he found a choice, he should not choose alone. She had spent too long hiding fear behind discipline, and now she was learning to trust someone else with the burden of command. Leo looked from Sarah to Aren, then back to the bridge, and said the path was unstable, but he could keep it alive long enough to cross if no one shook the floor too hard. Master John nodded once, already thinking like a builder instead of a fighter. He said the old system had weight limits, timing marks, and spirit locks, and that they would need patience more than courage. Victor refused to wait. He raised one armored hand, and his guards moved forward at once, trying to force the route before the chamber could close. Raven called out to him not to be foolish, but her voice carried little concern and even less respect. She wanted him to move because every mistake he made revealed more about the fortress. That was when her true motive began to show. She had not come only to serve Victor or to stop him. She had come to learn the hidden command behind Crown Hold, because she believed the Sky Fortress network had been designed by people who expected betrayal. If she could uncover the command, she could decide who deserved control and perhaps replace Victor entirely. Her plan was cold, but it made sense in the world she lived in. She had seen cities starve, roots fail, and rulers lie. In her mind, a secret truth in the right hands was safer than blind loyalty in the wrong ones. Yet even she had not expected the next revelation. As the bridge settled, Master John found a stone panel with the mark of the original builders, and beneath it was a sealed message tube made of dark alloy. He opened it with careful fingers, and inside was a worn relic strip carrying one clear warning. the world's seal was never meant to be awakened by power alone, because it did not only hold back the abyss. It also held back the memory of how the sky was lost once before. If the seal woke without balance, the fortress would not simply open. It would remember the old wound, and that wound could spread through every city tied to the network. That truth hit harder than any blade could. Aren looked at the black drop below the bridge, then at the faces around him, and he saw fear in all of them, even in Victor and Raven. The villain was no longer just Victor, because the real enemy was the idea that one person could own the future. The fortress had been built to stop that mistake. Thunderwolf took one step forward on the upper platform, and its cracked shoulder plate flashed as if it approved of the choice to slow down. Aren understood the message at last. Strength mattered, but only when it listened. He told Sarah to hold the line, Leo to keep the bridge stable, and Master John to study every mark he could find. Then he turned toward the deeper path alone, but not in isolation. He moved as someone who had finally accepted that leadership was not about being the loudest or the strongest. It was about carrying fear without letting it control the next step. Behind him, Victor shouted for his guards to advance, and Raven quietly adjusted her device, her mind already racing toward the next advantage. The chamber lights flickered once, then twice, and somewhere below in the hidden heart of Crown Hold, something vast and ancient answered with a slow, awakening pulse. Aren kept walking because he knew the next truth was already waiting, and now the whole fate of the sky was leaning toward his decision. Crown Hold shook like a giant waking from a long sleep, and cold light spilled across the broken inner hall. Below the shattered bridges, the world seal pulsed with a deep blue glow, and everyone there understood the same danger at once. If that seal opened the wrong way, the whole Sky Fortress network could fail, and the living abyss below would rise into every city above it. Aren stood at the front with Captain Sarah beside him, her long brown hair tied back tight as she watched every shadow. Leo, with sandy blonde hair and shaking hands, held his tools close and tried to breathe slowly. Master John, his thick white hair glowing in the relic light, looked at the chamber with a maker-expert eyes, and he whispered that the old system was not a weapon at all. It was a lock, and the lock was built to hold back the abyss itself. That was when the twist hit them all. The Thunder Wolf relic frame was not made to serve a ruler, and it never answered Victor or Raven because it rejected control. It answered Aren because his calm will matched the purpose of the old builders who wanted a protector, not a master. Victor cursed and ordered his guards forward, but the floor plates began to shift under them, and Raven quietly smiled as she raised her spirit engineer device, hoping to steal the power before anyone else understood it. Aren took one step toward the seal, then stopped because he finally saw the real choice. Victor wanted the fortress network to obey him so he could rule the sky by force. Raven wanted to bend the relics into her own private rise. But Sarah wanted only to save the people, Leo wanted to keep the machines alive, and John wanted the old promise to survive one more generation. So Aren placed his hands on the relic frame and guided the pulse into balance, not control. The chamber answered with a loud, steady hum, and the broken platforms locked into place one by one. Victor and his guards were driven back by a wave of light, while Raven lost her signal and stepped away in shock. High above, Hale and Blackwatch stopped trembling because the Sky Fortress network had begun to settle again. The Thunder Wolf stood fully awake, its blue eye bright and steady, and Aren smiled for the first time without fear. He had come looking for truth, but he left as its keeper.